So this is the first part of our pre-recorded lecture for day 2 of our online residential. It's in 2 parts, and this part is part 1. Well, kind of obvious, isn't it? It's the first part. So in this video, we're going to take everything we've learned from day 1 of our online residential and use it to develop and trial our interview guide. And this forms part of Assessment One. And here is how we're going to spend day 2 of our online residential. In our morning session, we're going to do 2 things. First, I'll outline Assessment 1. This is what this video is mostly about. And also in that first morning session, you'll have some time to start working on your interview guide, including developing your interview questions. And I'll put you into small groups of maybe 3 or 4, see what happens on the day. Put you in small groups to do that. Then I'm going to organize you randomly into pairs, and these pairs will be you and your interview partner, the person you're going to interview. And for the second part of the morning, you're going to get to know your interview partner and agree which time slots in week 6 and 7 are your top preferences. All those time slots are up on a document in the Moodle, on the Moodle site. But I'll show it to you on the day of the residential as well. But have a peek just to see what those times are, so you know in your head when you're free. And bring your diaries. Bring your diaries to the residential. Now, more about all of that in a minute. Then after lunch, you will have a bit of time for you and your partner to start role-playing your interview questions. And I've just given us about half an hour for that, but if you and your interview partner are having fun, you can continue through until our final session, which is a large group session where you have the chance to ask questions and sum up what we've learned from the residential as a whole. And we can also plan how we're going to keep up this class interaction, you know, you talking to your fellow classmates. We'll try and figure out a way we can maintain that, because that's really important for our unit. Maintain the contact you have with other people in the class before we all head off at the end of the day. Okay, so let me tell you about Assessment 1. Remember, the deadline has changed for this. It's no longer week 6, but it's now due for submission on the last Friday of the review exam week. That's the week after teaching week 12. So you've got lots of time for this. And I've given you more time because you have to both conduct the interviews after this residential rather than during it. And also you have to video record the interview and edit the video recording. And I'll tell you what resources we have for you in relation to both those things about recording your video and editing your video in a little bit. So here's your task for Assessment 1. There are actually 4 tasks. 3 of those tasks are written components and 1 is your video recording. And from these, you'll end up with 3 things to submit. So let's go to the tasks. Task 1, you'll develop 5 questions for a face-to-face semi-structured interview. Each question could include a main question and prompts. Okay, and those interview questions will need to be developed from the research question, which I'll get to in the next slide. Task 2, you'll develop a brief interview guide. That includes those 5 questions, but also includes a short opening introduction. What we're not going to include in that introduction is the process of gaining informed consent. We're just going to keep things nice and simple for us at this stage. So don't worry about the consent stuff for your interview guide. Your guide should also include some structuring information, and how you're going to place your interview questions into a logical sequence. Now, both these 2 tasks will be ones you can start on for day 2 of our residential. And you might actually be able to complete those tasks by the end of the second day of the residential. Task 3, you're going to organize and conduct an online individual interview with Zoom software with your interview partner. And you'll be using your interview guide and you'll video record your interview in Zoom, in the Zoom software. And task 4, you're going to write a short 500-word reflection on the interview process. Now, I've placed an example of an exceptionally well-written interview guide from last year up on our Moodle site. And when I say exceptional, I mean it received an HD grade. I've also included in the example. It's actually the whole of someone's Assessment One, so it's also got their reflective piece. What's missing is the audio recording of the interview. We did audio recordings last year. I haven't included that because that will just compromise the anonymity of the people involved. I've also included my completed marking rubric and qualitative feedback on the assignment, so you can see how it was marked. But last year, we had a slightly different marking rubric because we were audio recording, and I was assessing students' skills in being able to audio record their interview, because they had to do that with a recording device in situ. So they had to get it right. So I included that in the criteria, marking criteria. Now, because you're recording via Zoom software, we've removed that criteria for this year because you've got a little bit less control over recording. So here is our research aim for the interviews, and that aim converted into a research question. Now you'll notice the jargon here that needs to be reworded when you develop your interview questions from the research question. You need to make sure your interview questions are easily understood. The jargon in the research question is socio-environmental. There might be other bits of jargon, but that's the main bit of jargon there. And there is a simple way to replace that piece of jargon, but I'm going to leave it for you to figure that out in your small groups or in your partnering with your interview partner. So here's what you'll submit. You've got file 1, which is a Word document, which is your written interview guide. There's no word limit for your interview guide, but I would recommend this be no more than 1 page of text. Now, remember, this is something to take into your interview, and you don't want to be fidgeting with it too much. You just want something you can glance down at or look at quickly just before the interview. When you have more than a page, it becomes harder to glance at it, and if you do refer to it in your interview, you become more distracting as you have to turn over a page in your guide. Having more than 1 page can distract the interviewee. It could also make the interviewee worry that you've got a whole load of questions and the interview might go on for a long time, or that they're expected to give very brief answers, so you can get through all of the questions you've got written on your pieces of paper. File 2 is an MP4 file, which is a video file. This is a 5-minute edited sequence. I don't want it any less than 5 minutes, no more than 5 minutes. If it's longer than 5 minutes, I'm sorry, I just won't watch it after 5 minutes, just to keep it fair for everyone. But it certainly shouldn't be any less than 5 minutes, because I'll take that as a sign of, oh, he didn't have that many good bits to show. Okay, so a 5-minute sequence, edited sequence from your online interview. Now, your original video recording, your video interview, should be between 10 minutes and 30 minutes long. If it goes well, it should really be nearer that 30 minutes. But I don't get to see the full interview. I don't see your full recording. I only see the 5-minute edit. And in that 5-minute edit, don't include your mistakes, Unlike in my teaching videos where I include my mistakes, remember that for your edited video, I'm assessing you on your ability to perform well in an interview. So I'm looking to award you marks. So if you put mistakes in, you're not going to get marks for your mistakes. Now, the third file you submit is another Word document, which is your written reflection on the interview. This has a word limit. Sorry, I'm sweating here. This has a word limit of 500 words, and it's a strict word limit. I'll get onto that in a second. Now, you're used to writing words, putting them into Word document, editing your Word document, editing your text, saving it and sending it. But a video file, well, that's video editing. And maybe you have experience of video editing, but I'm going to cover you just in case you haven't, because you're not expected to have had that experience. So I'm going to assume you're beginners with all of this. And if you're not a beginner, just ignore me. Ignore the tutorials and the support documents I've put on the Moodle site, because you won't need it. But I'm assuming you're a beginner. Now, the good news is we've got a great piece of software on our CQUniversity computers, which is called Camtasia. Now, Camtasia is a computer screen recording software. It just records screenshots, but it also has a really nice video editing capability, and it's that which we shall be using. So you'll conduct your interview in Zoom. You record it in Zoom. Zoom will save the recording as an MP4 file, which is made available to you, either via cloud recording or you can record it straight onto your hard disk on your computer. And it's that file which you then load into the program Camtasia for editing. Now be careful, because in Camtasia there are lots of cool effects like transitions between cuts, fancy graphics, music. There's a library of video clips and lots more. Don't use any of that stuff, okay? You're not producing a dance video or a Hollywood blockbuster, and I'm not looking for your video editing skills. I'm not assessing you on your video editing skills, apart from being able to present a 5-minute video for me to assess. So just keep it nice and simple, nice and clean, and I just want you to cut your video down into those 5 minutes. But if you enjoy this stuff, then, fill your boots. Go and play around with the video editing in your own time, but not for this assessment, okay? Now, which 5 minutes do you include? Well, the best 5 minutes. The 5 minutes you think will most likely get you the most marks. And make sure you keep your eye on the marking rubric, because that will tell you how to get the marks. And just one thing you need to take some care of with all of this, and that's the audio. Make sure the audio is loud enough, that it peaks at no more than -6 decibels and averages at somewhere between -18 decibels, -12 decibels. I know I keep saying this and it confuses some of you. You think, what the hell is that? What's a -12 decibel? Well, don't worry about that. All you got to do is look for the audio level. If you're using the latest Camtasia, it should have audio levels in your video editing program. And what you're looking at is when the meter goes up somewhere in the light green to orange zone. You'll know it when you see it. Don't worry, if you're colorblind, I am too. So then you look for those numbers, -18, -12, and the rest of it. What you want to avoid is the levels going up into the red zone. So sorry about that sounding like gobbledygook, but I did mention it again in day one, so I might have confused you there also. Don't worry, you've got plenty of time to learn about this stuff, play around with video editing software. If you don't have those levels shown in your video editing software, then just make sure you play back the video and that the audio is good to you. Now, if you can't figure all of this out, just let me know and I'll help you through it. Now, if you can't get onto a university computer terminal and you can't access the Camtasia software, don't worry. There are lots of free video editing software programs out there. They all work in a similar principle to Camtasia. Google, see what you find, and let me know if you get into any problems or have any struggles. Now, this all means really that some of you are going to have to learn a new skill, which is video editing. But wow, wow. We are lucky to have this residential online, because we wouldn't have brought in video editing had we not. And video editing skills are really important these days, particularly if you have to use social media. And more of us have to use social media. Knowing how to edit video is a skill that actually many employers will really appreciate, particularly appreciating it right now with everything going online. But trust me, it's a good skill to have. It's a good thing to know how to do. Now, I've put a couple of links to Camtasia tutorials up on our Moodle site under the Assessment tab in the Assessment One resources section. And if you're using other software, you should be able to find tutorials for that software via Google. Google's good like that. Lots of YouTube videos out there helping you use video editing software, because it's a really important skill to have. Now, in part 2, I'll tell you some more about how to access the resources you need to set up your interview and record it in Zoom, and I'll tell you more about the third part of your submission for Assessment 1, which is your 500-word written reflection. And I'll talk you through the group work we'll be doing in the morning session on day 2. So I shall see you in part 2. Ta-da!